first grade friends. Mrs. Rask here for another writing lesson. This lesson is for the week of May 4th to May 8th. And what we're doing today is Wednesday's lesson, which is May 6th. And it is writing a letter to a member of your family. And you need to make sure you tell them why they're important to you. So last week we did a writing lesson with a letter as well. And you got to write a letter to your teacher. So this is more of a review lesson today if you did last week's lesson about writing a letter to your teacher. I know some of my rainbow friends did that lesson last week because I got pictures of your letter that you wrote to your teacher. So I hope you got to send your letter to your teacher as well. So this is more of a review lesson about how to write a letter to remind you all the important parts for a letter so that you can write one to your family member this week. So a family member is someone in your family. It could be mom, it could be dad, it could be an aunt or an uncle. You could write a letter to grandma or grandpa, a cousin, a brother, a sister. Anyone in your family would love to get a letter from you. So we're going to go over the important parts of a letter to help you remember what each thing is. So I'm going to see if you remember this from last week. This top line up here is called the heading. Do you remember what goes in the heading? Think if you remember. If you said it is the date that you write the letter, you're right. So the heading is the first part of your letter, and that's when it tells whoever you're writing the letter to what date you wrote the letter to them. The next part right here is the greeting. See if you remember what the greeting is, and that goes right here on this line. The greeting is who your letter is going to, and you usually start it with dear someone. So your greeting is going to depend on who you're writing your letter to. So if you're writing your letter to dad, your greeting would say, Dear Dad. If you're writing your letter to grandma, then your greeting would be Dear Grandma. So whoever you are writing your letter to, that is the second part of a letter, and that's called the greeting. Make sure when you write the name of the person that you're mailing your letter to, that you use a capital letter at the beginning of their name. We always start names with a capital. The next part of our letter is called the body, and that's the big part of a letter. So our body is this whole part here, and you've got enough room for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of writing. Let's check our lesson plan to see what things we need to have in our letter today. It says that you're writing a letter to a member of your family. Be sure to tell them why they're important to you. So you're going to have to think of some reasons why that person is important to you. And that's where you get to tell them all the reasons why they are important to me. You could start your letter and say, you are very important to me. What would I have to end that sentence with? Did you say a period? You would be right. Then you need to think why that person's important to you. Maybe you're writing your letter to mom and she cooks you breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. That's pretty important. You can't survive without food. You could say that. Thank you for always feeding me delicious and healthy meals. That would be a reason why someone would be important to you. So you can come up with as many reasons why you think that person's important to you. Remember, our stories usually have 3 details in there. So if you started your story with you are important to me, your next 3 lines would probably be reasons why that person's important to you so that they know, wow, they came up with a lot of reasons why I'm important to them. Then right here, we usually end our stories with a closing. Your closing could be something like, I love you. Thank you for being in my family. I appreciate you. Some way to wrap up the body of your letter. And that's the big part of a letter. Then we go down to our closing. And our closing is how we wrap up the story. This one says, your friend. Another closing could be, I love you, I miss you. Maybe it's someone that you haven't seen in your family in a while. But our closing today is already written for us, your friend. Then the last part of the story is called the signature. We talked about what a signature was last week, so let me see if you remember what the signature is. And that's this bottom line here. What do you think you have to write there? If you said, my name, you're right. You always have to sign your name or your signature at the bottom of a letter so that the person that gets the letter knows who it's from. They'd have no idea if you didn't do the signature. So in your letter that you're going to write to someone in your family, you're going to start with the heading, which is the date. The greeting is to tell who the letter is to. Dear mom, dear sister, dear grandpa. The body is the big part. This is where you're going to tell that person in your family why they're important to you. Your closing is already written for you today. You just get to trace it, your friend. And then your signature down here is where you sign your first and last name. The fun part of this comes to giving it to the family member. If it's someone that lives in your house, you can just hand it to them and say, here, I wrote you a letter. If you wrote this to a different family member who doesn't live in your house, you could ask whoever lives in your house to help you mail it to them, or you could even take a picture of it and email a copy of this to someone in your family. We hope you enjoy picking someone in your family that you would like to tell them why they're important to you. And we hope you have a good time giving them those reasons. Thanks for watching.